On December 24th, 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and Afghan fighters launched a resistance using guerrilla tactics. Many Muslims from around the world were flocking there to defend Afghanistan against the Soviets. Agents who took advantage of the chaos in the region were also operating freely. For example, through the CIA's Cyclone operation, the Mujahideen were being armed and financed against the Soviets. Among those fighting the Soviets was a 24-year-old, 1.80-meter-tall man from Arabia. His father, Saudi bin Laden, was a billionaire businessman and the owner of the Bin Laden Group. Because of this, the young man had the means to provide financial and logistical support to groups fighting the Soviets. This person was Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was born on March 10th, 1967, in the city of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. His billionaire father had more than 20 marriages and over 50 children, with Osama being the 18th child. After his father's death, Osama bin Laden inherited $253 million. Bin Laden played a major role in bringing thousands of people to join the Afghan side against the Soviets. He was also among the founders of Maktab al-Khidamat, meaning the Services Bureau, which was established to gather money, weapons, and volunteers from the Arab world. Not stopping there, bin Laden founded a military training camp in Afghanistan called Al-Masada. The camp became so well known that the Soviets launched a major attack on it. Bin Laden was wounded in the leg during the assault. Their strong resistance attracted great attention, and the Mujahideen saw the battle as a victory, because it was the first time the Afghan side had managed to hold their position for so long. With these developments, bin Laden's popularity increased day by day. That same year, he joined a Salafi organization called Egyptian Islamic Jihad, led by Ayman al-Zawahiri. As the years passed, the Soviet-Afghan war approached its final stages. The success of the jihadist groups there further encouraged bin Laden and his team, and it was decided that the jihad should continue even after the war. In frequent meetings held at that time, the name Al-Qaeda, which would soon shake the entire world, was heard for the first time, and during the meeting held on August 20th, the Al-Qaeda organization was officially founded. The minutes stated the following: Al-Qaeda is essentially an organized Islamic group whose purpose is to glorify the name of God and uphold God's religion. According to the records, the Mujahideen under the Al-Qaeda umbrella would be trained, and after trial camps, the best fighters among them would be selected into the organization. Shortly afterward, the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan, and bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia to continue working at the family construction company. However, the tensions did not cease. In 1990, Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait. The United States took a firm stance against Saddam and declared that it would defend Kuwait. For this, the US wanted to deploy its troops in Saudi Arabia. But Osama bin Laden met with King Fahd and the Minister of Defense, saying, "We do not need America's help. American soldiers should not be on Muslim soil." His request was in vain, the proposal was rejected, and US forces were deployed in Saudi Arabia. This angered bin Laden considerably, and he argued that the real war was not against Iraq, but against Islam. His relationship with the Saudi government deteriorated progressively. As the tension escalated, the Saudi government raided bin Laden's farm and disarmed his armed men. However, since bin Laden came from a very powerful family, he used his connections to request permission to go to Pakistan. This request was granted and his house arrest ended. Bin Laden then headed to Pakistan. Upon arrival, he wrote a letter to his family, stating that he would never return to Saudi Arabia. After spending a few months there, he moved to Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, because the Islamist group called the National Islamic Front had taken power through a coup, making Sudan an ideal place for bin Laden. In Sudan, bin Laden continued to expand his support network by engaging in construction and agriculture sectors. Meanwhile, the growth of the still dormant al-Qaeda accelerated rapidly. Al-Qaeda members who flocked there received military training and gathered intelligence about Africa. And Al-Qaeda's first attack took place in 1992. On December 29th, US soldiers who were preparing to go to Somalia were staying at the Gold Moher Hotel and the Aden Movenpick Hotel, and both hotels were bombed by Al-Qaeda members. However, by the time the attacks occurred, the American soldiers had already left the hotels. Only 3 months later, Al-Qaeda attempted an even larger attack. On February 26, 1993, Al-Qaeda members carried out a bombing at the World Trade Center in New York, known as the Twin Towers. The team responsible for the attack was led by a Pakistani man, Ramzi Youssef. 6 people were killed and more than 1,000 were injured. In an interview years later, bin Laden claimed he had nothing to do with the attack and did not know those who carried it out. Al-Qaeda had now begun infiltrating many countries. They even provided fighters and training support in the Somali civil war. With these developments, the Saudi Arabian government stripped Osama bin Laden of his citizenship in April 1994 and confiscated all his assets in the country. Bin Laden wrote a letter to King Fahd stating that US forces must leave Saudi Arabia and that if they did not, he would carry out attacks. And so it happened. On November 13, 1995, a bomb-laden vehicle attack was carried out on the US-controlled Saudi Arabian National Guard training center in Riyadh. Again, bin Laden denied ordering the attack, but expressed satisfaction over it. However, the perpetrators stated that they acted on his behalf. After these incidents, bin Laden became a highly visible and concerning figure. As a result, the United States increased pressure on Sudan, leading to bin Laden's expulsion from the country in May 1996. He then returned to Jalalabad, Afghanistan. Upon returning to Afghanistan, bin Laden published a statement in the Al-Quds Al-Arabi newspaper, declaring jihad against the United States. In his declaration, he stated his goals were to expel American forces from the Arabian Peninsula, overthrow the Saudi government, and support all Islamist organizations around the world. Around that time, a major shift occurred in Afghanistan. The Taliban, led by Mohammed Omar, captured the capital city of Kabul and established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This development clearly benefited bin Laden, who moved to the city at Omar's invitation. With the Taliban now in control of the country, Al-Qaeda and bin Laden continued their existence under Taliban protection. Al-Qaeda and its allied groups did not stop their attacks. They carried out truck bomb attacks on the US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, killing 224 people and injuring more than 4,000. After these terrorist attacks, US President Bill Clinton authorized the CIA to use lethal force against bin Laden, as capturing him alive was considered extremely difficult. Although many operations targeted Al-Qaeda, bin Laden repeatedly managed to escape. As the years went by, in June 1999, bin Laden was placed on the FBI's list of the 10 most wanted fugitives. By then, bin Laden had become one of the most frequently mentioned figures in news bulletins. Shortly afterward, an attack was carried out on the USS Cole, resulting in the deaths of 17 American sailors. But bin Laden wanted to carry out even bigger operations and create an even greater impact. He set his sights on the heart of America. At first, he considered targeting the US Bank Tower in Los Angeles, but he abandoned this plan. The targets shifted back to the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the Capitol Building in Washington, key symbols of America's economic and military power. Bin Laden had set his ambitions extremely high. Toward the end of 1999, a group of Al-Qaeda terrorists arrived in Afghanistan from Hamburg, Germany. They were well-trained, spoke fluent English, and had become familiar with Western culture after living in the West for long periods. The team for the major attack planned against the United States was now ready. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the sky over New York was a clear, bright blue. People rolled up their sleeves because of the heat. Suddenly, a plane turned toward the North Tower of the World Trade Center and crashed into it. Chaos erupted instantly. As smoke continued to rise from the North Tower just 80 minutes after the impact, television stations broadcasting live conveyed the disaster to the world. Meanwhile, another plane appeared over the city. Another United Airlines aircraft crashed into the South Tower of the Twin Towers. As the towers began to burn, people trapped on the upper floors were left helpless, and the city became covered in a thick blanket of smoke. Both towers completely collapsed in less than 2 hours, but it wasn't over. A third plane crashed into the western side of the Pentagon near Washington, D.C. And still it was a fourth of the Capitol building in the Capitol, but it crashed in Pennsylvania before reaching its target. In the Twin Towers attacks, 2,606 people were killed. At the Pentagon, 125 people, and 441 first responders also lost their lives. Thousands more were injured. Bin Laden had assigned 19 individuals for the attacks. They had boarded the planes in groups of 4 or 5, with each group including at least one person who had received pilot training. Strangely enough, these individuals had been trained at flight schools in the United States. Hours after the attacks, President George W. Bush addressed the nation with a trembling voice, promising the American people that those responsible would face immense retaliation. In reality, Bin Laden had repeatedly declared in his speeches that he intended to strike the West. So many people criticized the government, questioning why no precautions were taken, even though the attack was coming. After what could be considered the largest terrorist attack in history, the United States mobilized all its power to pursue Bin Laden and his supporters. Since Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were believed to be supporting each other, a major operation was launched. This operation was named the War on Terror, and with it, the United States and Britain began striking Taliban and Al-Qaeda targets in Afghanistan. These attacks marked the beginning of the Afghanistan War, in which other NATO countries, including Turkey, also participated. Yet there was still no trace of Bin Laden. A reward of $27 million was offered for anyone who would provide information leading to Bin Laden's capture. As a result, Bin Laden stopped appearing in public. Soon after, intelligence reports claimed that Bin Laden had been located in a mountainous region called Tora Bora in Afghanistan. However, although a battle took place there, Bin Laden managed to escape alive. Then, the situation became unclear. It was as if Bin Laden had vanished into thin air. Many reports about his whereabouts emerged, but none contained solid information. Rumors about his death also circulated frequently. By 2007, when he had shown no sign of life for years, the reward for him was increased to $50 million. Years passed, and as the net tightened around the vanished Bin Laden, US Delta Force units disguised themselves as Afghans and searched for him everywhere. In 2010, a major development occurred. Bin Laden's courier, Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, was identified by US intelligence. Ahmed revealed his location when he spoke on the phone with his family living in Kuwait. According to the signal, Ahmed was staying in a large compound, surrounded by high walls in the city of Abbottabad. The CIA began monitoring the site with satellite imagery. It was believed the compound had been built to hide an important person, and the most likely candidate was Bin Laden. After careful, detailed planning, the operation was approved. There was no room for error. The mission was named Operation Neptune Spear. A total of 79 commandos and 1 dog were assigned. The commandos reached the compound by helicopter, cut the electricity, and then used explosives to blow open the walls and gates before advancing toward the house. Initial observations suggested that senior al-Qaeda leaders were living there with their families. When American soldiers entered the house, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti opened fire first. The interior of the building turned into a full-scale battle zone. As the team advanced, they eventually confronted bin Laden himself. The world's most wanted man, hunted for years, was standing right there. When bin Laden saw the team, he tried to flee to his room, where he was wounded by a bullet. The US soldiers pursuing him then shot him, killing him on the spot. The entire operation lasted 37 minutes. According to official statements, bin Laden's body was not buried, but was instead buried at sea. However, some people never accepted that bin Laden was truly dead, and increasingly embraced conspiracy theories about the event. But that is a topic for another video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button.